Hey, everybody.
Welcome to Carlie's Couch. We're on the couch, and we have a guest who's not on the couch, but he's virtual.
So he's technically on the couch.
Yeah, he's on the virtual couch. Why am I always singing? Yo, what is my problem? I can't say nothing regular. Every time we have a guest, too, I always be embarrassing myself. Because then they be laughing, and people are like, who is that? We're going to tell you who that is, though. Today, it's Valentine's week, or it was Valentine's Day yesterday, from you hearing this. So hopefully you'll keep the love going for the rest of the week at least.
All year.
Yeah, if not, give it at least another day. So today we're going to kind of be talking about lessons of love, but in education, and with the focus on that education space with the youth, with our teachers, lessons that parents could also take as well, lessons that we could probably take to do better with each other. And so to do that, today we have Marcus Harden as our guest on the podcast. Marcus, we're going to introduce you, but first of all, just thank you for being here.
Yay.
I want you to say hello to the people.
Thank you all for having me. Yes, thank you all for having me. I'm excited. And the couch is comfy, y'all.
Well, we put in a lot of effort. You know what I mean? A lot of dollars.
Right.
Something that we've been working to do on the Bouch is to bring in experts. And, you know, the average person, like, we know a little bit about love, but for this episode, and especially in the facet of education, thought it was important to bring an expert. And so Marcus Harden is a proud uncle, mentor, and proud resident of Atlanta, Georgia. He is self-professed mayor of the South End of Seattle, his hometown, resident Batman.
I love Frasier.
And proud alumni of Rainier
Beach High School.
Rainier Beach High School and the University of Washington. Marcus is in his 16th season as an educator and has experience as a teacher, counselor, dean, administrator, program and policy manager. I can't read today, sorry about that. And is currently the co-founder and lead learner of the Academy for Creating Excellence Atlanta, an all African-American male-focused charter school opening in 2021. Marcus believes deeply in focusing his work on creating better culture and climate for students, families, and staff, restorative justice practices, and mindset and resiliency that leads to excellent and equitable educational outcomes for all students.
I'm glad you read that, because now he can educate you on how to read.
About to say,
It's about me, and I was like, man, who wrote that?
See, first of all, I was always that kid that raised my hand to read in class, but like, if that's any indication, that's exactly why he's on here to talk about love. Because y'all know I'm like real lovey, but I don't have that background and I don't have those policy and all those positions in it. So Marcus, we were just really honored to have you today, and shout out to your 16th season as an educator. Like, that in and of itself deserves applause.
No, thank you all. Yeah, no. Super dope to be here, and just excited to spread the word on love. Like you said, it's bigger than sentimentality, right? Like, it's about how we can love all year and how we can show up for each other and young people. And so just be able to be here.
Will you tell us a little bit about your journey as an educator and how you got to a place where love was a major focus? Because, you know, I think it's just now recently where we even hear about mindfulness in schools and, you know, just even some of those types of themes. But to connect love to education and, you know, this outwardly, how did you get to that point?
I'll try to give you the Jet Magazine version, although I appreciated the bio. It's so weird hearing your own bio. But so the Jet Magazine version, like I said, I was born and raised in Seattle. I'm an only child. My parents kissed once, and that was it. And so raised in that way. And like I said, went to Rainier Beach High School, which is Seattle's primarily black high school. So Seattle's 4% black, and so I would say 3% of Seattle went to Beach. And left there and actually had a football and drama scholarship. So I was a little unconventional. I was a thespian and a football player going into college. And my major was in political science. And so I wanted to be the first black president. Somebody else beat me to it. But that was my angle. And so, somebody got me. But so, you know, and I wouldn't have been old enough for a while anyway. But be that as it may. And so pursued that. And through pursuing that, I went to the University of Washington eventually. I didn't start at UW, but ended up there. In one of my last classes, I had to do a capstone at a local school. Now, my mom ran a home daycare, so I actually hated kids. I hate to say that on live record, but I didn't like kids because I'm the only child. I was like, man, it's taking up my time. But I had to volunteer at a K-8 school. Right. I had to volunteer at a K-8, and I fell in love and found myself like volunteering there in the afternoon. But my path was set. My first job out of college is I interned in the Senate for Hillary Clinton in her office. And so I was on my way to D.C. while doing this internship. So I was like, no, I'm about to be black president. Love the kids, but I'll come back. So I went to D.C. and did that. I loved my experience there. Super grateful and blessed to have had it. But realized the work I was doing in politics, I just wasn't in love with it. I thought that was going to be the path. And I had no passion for it. But I believe the universe wills you to where you're supposed to be. One of my assignments was around charter school law in New York at the time. And I just spent hours in the Congressional Library, like doing research on education. And I was like, man, this is like more powerful than wanting to go to some black tie gala or something. So, I was in D.C. about 10 months. I was about to be at the point where I don't know if OnlyFans was around there, but I was about to start doing some extra things to make some money. And I was just like, man, I'm not happy here. So I went back home to Seattle and visited the students I had been kind of mentoring. And the principal there was like, literally as I'm walking in, this lady's walking out, who actually was my old teacher. And I walked past her and the principal said, all the kids are still talking about you. Like the counselor just quit. Are you looking for a job? And I was like, well, I'm kind of doing this DC thing. And they literally interviewed me on the spot, brought in a kid who had just gotten in trouble. And, I interviewed on the spot. That was a Thursday. I flew back to DC that Friday. I moved back to Seattle that Monday. And my journey, like, unconventionally started. And I became the school counselor. And that was in 2005. And I said that school was a K-8. And, it just taught me so much. So, that journey led me to my whole professional time now. And in that time, I took the work home. I ended up foster adopting 6 of my students, or 4 of my former students, and two of my second cousins. And just fell in love with the work and just saw the need, specifically with young black men and young black women and young people of color, and just the educational gaps that we saw. So it just took me to this place of seeing that what was lacking and no shade to our earlier comments about reading, but was a lack of love for literacy in a different way, and education holistically. So not just in the school way, but like what is everything that young people bring to the table. And then, of course, people being afraid to hear love. Like folks with cussing staff meetings, if you say love, and they start like cursing up. I'd be like, man, I love you. I love the kid. And then they'd be like, I'm like, no, other business. So that's how it started, and it's been an incredible journey since then.
So was love and literacy, was that something that came out of any type of like experiments? Are you doing something, or is it just from your observations of, you know what, when I treat these kids a certain way, I get a better outcome? Like, what was it that you were putting in and the outcomes that you were seeing that made you dive so deeply into that area?
I would say there would be 2 things that be married, and I can't take full credit for the first half of it. So there's some brilliant people out of New York, Cornelius Minor and Cassandra Minor, who do excellent literacy work and then tap into kind of those same type of mindsets. And so I began to do a lot of work with them. At the time, they were at Columbia College. And then on my end was just seeing that I don't ever like to poverty, like that notion of kids that coming from broken families, all this stuff. Like, that's not true. People love at the level that they're able to. And I've seen parents who maybe I would have done it differently, right, from my mind. But to be real with you, I tell everybody, like, becoming a parent overnight of students or of children that I didn't go on dates for taught me how to love in a whole different way, right? So it became those things of just seeing, one, what students needed and how to marry those together, and 2, how to get them to have a love of both, right? So how can they have a different level of learning? If you understand education, nothing happens without literacy, right? If you're not literate, nothing else moves for the most part. There's random exceptions, but you can't move at a high level. And then true love, like knowledge itself. So when we think about that, like I always tell my kids, it's a quote that I say all the time. It's like, relationship is the driver of change and love is always the vessel, right? So to get to change, you have to be in love. You have to first be in love with yourself, learn how to love others, and then, not getting too deep because we don't usually bring like religion or those things in the school, but like a love of something greater than you. And so many times we don't have those conversations with kids because we think they're not ready for it. But man, they know, right? They definitely know. If you want to know honesty, talk to a kindergartner, right? Who would be like, hey, Mr. Marcus, which was my school name. They'd be like, hey, you look like a poor Tyler Perry. And I'm like, what? Like what? Like, what?
Roasted you.
Like, what's good? And they'd be so genuine. And I'd be like, oh, yeah, I've been.
You thought you was going to say thank you.
I have no choice, right? Like, sadly, black males are only 2% of the teaching population, right? So I've been every black TV character that's above 6'5", like in history. I've been Tyler Perry. I've been The Blind Side. Latest one was in Baku. I think that one a little better than the other two. But yeah, that's it. But so I just think blending those and then rethinking even literacy, right? So this generation being so literate on the internet, right? Like being so literate other ways. And so it's shifting not only their paradigm, but shifting educators and parents' paradigms who come in and say, well, my kid's not reading. I'm like, no, they're actually consuming a lot of literacy a day. What are we going to do with that, and how are we going to channel that to make them feel successful?
Can I ask about a little clarity with the word literacy? From what I think it means is being able to read. Is literacy more about how you like comprehend, or is it just literally reading that you're talking about when you say literacy?
I'm talking about comprehension. So thank you for that clarity. So like literacy in everything, right? Can you be lawfully literate, right? Can you be literate in the ways you are interpreting and then expressing yourself in the world, right? And so when we work with our young men, the first thing we do in our program in both Atlanta and in Seattle is we do the 5 love languages test, right, as a baseline. And then we do a literacy test, right? But then we talk to them about like, what did you just read in the assessment that you just took, right? Like, and what did you comprehend from that? Because, and I don't want to geek out too much in the teacher world, right? But there's word decoding, there's speed of reading, but there's also maybe one of the most important is comprehension, right? So I'm a fast reader and I'll read just to finish, but then I realized I have to go back. Because I was like, can I really understand?
I'm done. Sometimes, like, I'll be at the bottom of the page and be like, I wasn't even really reading the words. My eyes just moved. Like, I was thinking about something else.
Exactly. And I have to go back and reread.
Yeah.
To backtrack a little bit, so you mentioned like what you start with, but when you're looking at concepts like love and like literacy, which is a focus, literacy is, and a lot of education, right? Focusing on that and getting kids up to par with reading level, all of that. Like, how did you figure out where to start and how to start implementing this love and literacy into what you're doing?
I would say the figuring out is a lot of trial and error. I'll be very honest. I will say that a lot of it came through the work at the first school I was at, the Madonna Arcade in Seattle, which at the time was a high poverty school, all that other stuff, low income, blah blah blah. And so, but what we saw was that once we started making shifts to them becoming, so first it became about identity. So we changed the whole culture of the school and made it about like, I am a reader, I am a writer. We really shifted to a lot of stuff about young people writing. But the cool thing is they were writing their stories, so personal narrative. So they were writing their stories and learning how to edit and re-edit just their stories. So if you're at kindergarten, it's taking like, what did you do this morning, right? And literally walking them through the editing process and getting them used to that. And then doing this huge job of like making it a big deal when they publish. So we literally would put 30 kindergartners writings up, which could be pictures and maybe just 2 sight words that they understand. But then they become authors for the day, right? So when we go and we have these readings and it's how they build, right? So then they build this love for this thing. But at the same time, we're teaching them like how to receive this love as not just a person, but as a scholar, right? And then concurrently, which my work is more definitely in the social emotional kind of field, is like, okay, now how does that feel? Right now, what's the transference? So now, where else do you feel like this? How else can you make yourself feel like this? And that's love, right? And you might not love the writing, but wow, did you fall in love with the response? So like now, let's talk about that, because it's always usually young people will always tell you it's pretty simple at the end of the day, and most of the time adults are too. Like a lot of my work now is with adults, and I do the same stuff, right? We start off with, let's talk about your love language, because a lot of times that's just the unhealed part of us. I'm very honest, and this is all due respect, because they'll probably hear this, but like I was searching for love from my father for a long time, right? Like in the ways that I didn't understand that he was giving, because our love language was off, right? I didn't understand this until I got older. And so I would be honest with you, like my purpose and passion, specifically for young men, was a lot just doing my own healing, right? And so we have those conversations with adults, because oftentimes you have an adult who will become a teacher at 22, you still living in mom's basement. I was, right? Like, when I came back from DC, I was like, Mom, don't drink the orange juice. Like I wasn't fully actualized myself as a grown man. So I think those two especially. So I would say that part. And then it's just been a lot of trial and error. The second half of my career, I spent in alternative education. So working with young men in juvenile, young ladies, escaping sex trafficking, and then young people coming out of drug addiction. And that showed me the power, as cliche as it is, the power of what self-love is, right? And how sometimes you have to be a mirror for people to come back for that. So that's where a lot of the restorative work, healing work came in at. And some of my most transformative life experiences definitely came out of those three spaces.
I feel like we hear the most about love languages and the sense of relationships, romantic relationships. But can you go through what some of the languages are and tell us what the comparable kind of action or expression of that would be as an educator or in this kind of realm?
Well, this is not, my students hear quotes all the time. Like Maya says it best in the sense of, like, again, it's not about mush. It's not about sentimentality. Love is an essence. But to that point, we use the 5 love languages, but there's a lot of different ones. There's one for children, there's one for teens, there's one for singles, right? So it's not about
like a different version?
Necessarily. Yes, yes, ma'am. So it's not about necessarily intimacy in the romantic way, in the what do they call it, in the eros way. And so the 5 love languages are acts of service, words of affirmation, physical touch, gifts, and I can't believe I just blanked on this. And quality time. Thank you. Quality time. And so looking at those 5, so literally 2 weeks ago, I got to do some work with 30 young men from Chicago, Arkansas, the Bronx, and we took the test together virtually. It's probably my favorite day of the year so far. Second only to being with y'all right now. But and so sitting on a call for 2 hours with young men going through their love language, and the first thing one young man was he was like, man, I don't know what love is. Like, I wanted to sing the old 80s song on the Mariah remix to be like, I want to know what love is. I wanted to help them out. But we went through it, and it was fascinating to see them, be like, okay. And I was like, man, this is just one of them, right? Like, it's just like horoscopes. You kind of got to know yourself at some point. But this might be a tool. And so we went through, and I was just like, man, is it possible that you've been receiving love and just not knowing it because it hasn't been spoken to you in the way that you've known it? And then I asked them to do 2 activities. One was to think about how that shows up for them at home in their relationship with their parents or their siblings. And then 2, asking them how it shows up for them at school, right? And who they feel loved by, and if those things match, and if people are speaking their language, right? So for me, I don't believe I'm about to give this away on a podcast, but mine are words of affirmation and acts of service, right? So for me, those 2 show up in a different way. And so if I encounter a student who's a physical touch, or I think about one of my nephews, his is physical touch. So it might be just as simple as like putting my hand on his shoulder, right, in a school context, right? Quality time is if you have a student or if you have a son or a nephew or a daughter, whatever, sometimes it's like having that person be the one who runs errands with you, right? Like that real quality time. Gift is self-evident in some respect, right? So, and words of affirmation, like for me, words of affirmation is huge. I'm not very sentimental. You guys can halfway see behind me. I'm a minimalist. I don't got much up on the walls, but like I keep every letter. I keep like every text. Like that fills me up, even though I cringe while I'm receiving it. But as my language that I give, I'll hype you up all day. I'm the ultimate hype man. Like I will, and I'll mean it. And it's very authentic. And students know that, but I've also learned that to the student who that's not their language, I can be offensive, right, and not know it. So those are conversations we have. So after I got done with them, I then worked with their teachers for 2 hours, and we unpacked that a little with protecting their confidentiality and what they shared, with being like, this is what your student said. How are you showing up now? How can that set the environment for everything else? Because I fully believe teacher talk is like culture will eat curriculum for breakfast. If you don't have a culture of love, no matter what you're trying to execute and teach, it will not matter. So that was the conversations we had.
My first thoughts with that is that sounds like a lot of work for an educator who has a lot of kids. But that you have a lot of kids, and everybody's story really is different. And to really be intentional about understanding that Jimmy appreciates this, but Lindsay over here responds to this, you know, is it received well, or is it received like, whew, I don't know if I could do all this, or how do you manage to do all of that? And everybody, like you said, you mentioned as well that not everybody is like that super lovey, or it's easy for them like it may have become for you as you've practiced your skills and gotten to that space. But, you know, how is that manageable? Or is that our goal, that it should be manageable with everybody, huh?
Yeah. I think it's how I've ended up in this space. A younger version of me would just show up and be like, I'm just here for the kids, right? So I would do all this work with the kids. But then I realize now, like, there's a level of guilt, I guess. I realize now, like, I was preparing them, but not preparing the environment, right? You know, the cliche is you can't heal in the same environment you got sick in. But I like being with the kids. I still do, right? I don't care if this kid's play. I love my time with the kids more than I do with adults. No shade to adults, but, you know, it's funner. But what I realized, I had to mature in my way of, like, it wasn't enough for me to play the superhero, right? Because one, I'm not it for every young person. Two, I can't love every young person, no matter how hard I try. Not like that. I can love them, but not in the way they need to be. And then realizing that we had to go to the teachers. And a lot of it is, jokingly, it's doing that work and unpacking with adults first, right? So it's digging through their stuff and then getting them to that place, because teaching is persona, right? Like, you really, it's method acting at its finest. Like, you become this character, because when I started working in schools, I saw teachers who had it all together, and in their personal life, I'd be like, what is going on here? Like, those don't match. Like, there was a disconnect, right? Which is not fair for me to have the notion that they should have it together. But if you think about it, you have a person who just comes out of college, and all of a sudden, literally, if your elementary has control of 30 lives for over a year, if you're high school and middle school, you have maybe 180 to 200 people that you literally, with the stroke of a pen, can affect the outcome in the short and long term of their future, right? One of the first activities I do with teachers is, tell me about your favorite teacher. To a person, nobody's ever been able not to. Then I say, tell me about your least favorite. Again, to a person, everybody remembers. I don't care if you're 90, I don't care if you're 29, right? Like, those people hold, and they never talk about curriculum. They always talk about how the person made you feel. And that's how it started off. With, like, it was a feeling of love and experience you have with a person. Can you recreate that with your kids and with your baby? So it's work. And it's work that is, it's fun. I've learned to enjoy it. Like I said, I think for me, I get filled by being with the young people. So that's what keeps me energized. And then it allows me to do the head work and the hard work with adults. And it's not just teachers, it's parents too. In Seattle, so ACE, our program, is both in Atlanta launching, but has been running in Seattle for a while. And we do a lot of work with parents as well, having these conversations. Our work specifically is for young men. So we have conversations with parents about, you know, their sons or their nephews or grandsons becoming interdependent, specifically in that realm of adolescence, because it feels like they don't love them or need them no more. And it's like, nah, they're just growing up, right? And for a lot of us, we like to forget 12 through 14. And we romanticize like 17, 18, you know, but like those are those awkward years. Like, you know, I was 6 foot and sounded like Mariah Carey at 12. So it's like not a phase that I want to remember, but you get through it.
Yeah, 12 to 14 was, I think, middle, because I also coach middle school volleyball. I not currently, but I did for the past 3 years. And middle school is awkward for everybody involved.
I was homeschooled, so I was awkward because I was homeschooled. When I went back to high school, I didn't see. I was chilling at the crib, talking to myself.
Yeah,
I think
it was wild.
I think we're about to see a huge homeschool movement after this, one, and then two. It's funny you said that, because middle school, whenever I ask the teacher a question, is the least answered. People always either answer favorite teacher in elementary. People always answer high school.
I can imagine.
People like, and this is just my independent study of this, but like, it's fascinating to me that nobody ever talks about middle school. It's just like it never happened. And so it's very interesting.
Trauma avoidance. One thing I want to go back to, you mentioned in working with the parents, I did have a question about, like, how is it received whenever you come to these parents and you said, you know, specifically for young men, young Black men, young brown men, young people of color, like, how do the parents are like, wait, you teaching my kids about love? And then also, could you explain a little bit more about interdependence? Because you mentioned that word, but I don't know if that's something that everybody knows what it is. And I think it's really important.
Well, with the parents, I think it's usually a conversation, and it's typically usually around like that, to your point, that early teen time. So these connect, I guess. So one is having a conversation about like, this isn't your baby boy anymore. Like he'll always be your baby, but you are raising a young man to be interdependent. And so like a lot of my study is in youth adolescent development. And so interdependence usually begins to happen between 12 and 17, but it starts at 12. Specifically for young men, might last a little longer, 12 to 19, 12 to 20. But interdependence is like when young people are starting to figure out that their parent isn't kind of the only answer in the world, and they need them for safety, right? They'll always come back to you for safety, but they're trying to forge their identity based on everything else that they're inputting. So usually from 12 to 17, males and young females, their most important people in their life are their peers, right? So now they're not dependent on you for affirmation. They're not dependent on you for everything, for friendship. They like, now it's like, well, you know, Lexi said yada yada yada, and you're like, but I like, never mind. Like, you know,
you wasn't one of my little friends. So there you go.
Yeah, and I ain't one of your little friends. That's where the phrase comes from. But so it's creating that, and that is just biologically natural, right? Like throughout human development, that happens in different cultures. Sometimes it happens faster, right? Like in the old days, you was married by 12 or 13, right? But that was independent in a way. But yeah, so it's creating that. But I think parents are happy, I think, because, so it's an interesting thing that happens when we're talking about love, right? The love shifts, and I don't think it ever changes from parent to child. They're just looking for other places to find love, right? It's cliche as it is. This is where gangs happen. This is where people can get sucked into other activities because they're looking for affirmation that is new, that is different, right? Sometimes, so when we have this conversation with parents, and they're like, oftentimes they're super grateful. Just one, to know that somebody else loves your kid is awesome. Like, that's a reflection of you. I think, and two, that somebody's having a conversation that they're unpacking, because oftentimes with parents, kids aren't having that conversation with them, and with our school and our program, what we want to be is that, and Starbucks calls it kind of second place, but we want to kind of be that intermediary, because a lot of times we can work on the back end with parents and say, well, you know, Deshaun is saying this to me. I think he's trying to say this to you, and then vice versa, right? Like, so it's creating those loveful kind of relationships that when they get a little older, they figure out, but at that moment, they just want somebody to kind of cling on to. So my ego moment was when my boys turned 17, they moved in with me, they were 13, 14, but they're also my students, right? So I thought I was the coolest thing on earth to them. But 16, 17, they started like loving their coaches and coming home talking about Mr. Tim and Mr. Riley. And I'm like, and this guy ain't cool. Like, this guy just sucks. Like, even me, right? I do this work. My little ego was hurt. But I had to realize, like, okay, let me talk to you guys. He's like, and it was interesting becoming the guy, because I wasn't the cool guy no more. I was dad. I was uncle, right? And so now I had to go to them and be like, all right, boy, can you talk to them about sitting in their room because I'm tired of busting or whatever. And it would be this interesting juxtaposition because I was the cool guy to their friend, right? So like, as they've gotten older now, we have their conversation. They were like, you were the worst to live with because our friends would get mad at us when we got in trouble because, you know, they couldn't come over no more. And they'd be like, they get mad at us instead of getting mad at you. Because to them, you was cool, but we hated you. I was like, well, should have shows up, right? Should have shows better. But it's unpacking all of that with parents to not take that personal, to know it's part of the development and just, you know, steady the storm. But a lot of parents don't even know how their kids love, right? Like I said, like had I known my dad was more of a physical touch and quality time person, we probably could have mended a lot earlier. But, you know, I didn't know. I was 16, 17. But, like, our love languages are all the way off, right? Those are my bottom, too. So,
yeah. I never thought about that, to be honest. I'm trying to think right now, like, what are my parents?
My mom, right. My mom did the same way. So I'm a mama's boy, right? Yeah. Like my mom's a flip. I'm acting service first, word second, speech words first, act second. We in there, right? Like there's very few missteps. And so I think it's having those, we have parents do it too. It's having those conversations with parents and saying, okay, as a tool, and this is not the only measure, how can you do that? And again, I think as a Black man, just saying love out loud over and over again is revolutionary. The first thing I say to kids who I just met is, if nobody told you they love you today, I have now. So you can't say that didn't happen, right? Like I love you and I mean it, and this is what this means. And that's how we move forward. And it's shifting, to your original question, is shifting that for all educators, to get away from this compliance business, in this factory business. And so we have an incredible opportunity for 13 years, for the most part, to play a large role in young people's lives. And we can fill it with tests, and we can fill it with compliance, and we can fill it with love that helps them fill up their tanks. And when they walk out, they can be as actualized as an 18-year-old can be.
Man, that's a beautiful thing. Real quick, sorry, I was going to say, and I love that you were talking about love in action. So it's not just telling them like that's important, they need to hear it, but like showing them that.
And I wanted to ask you, with COVID and a lot of virtual learning now, do you feel that anything has changed, or what's become more of a challenge in showing love and expressing those things when you're on computer screens and, things being a little bit different now?
This would be a whole episode to itself. Yes. And I'm a sickening optimist, so I've had to come around to this. I think what is exposed for adults, and like I said, I do a lot of work across the country with teachers. What is exposed for adults is, I think it's let kids into them past their persona, right? So like I've worked my whole career now to blend Marcus Harden, the real man, and Mr. Marcus, the school entity, like into one. Like it's just me, like what you see is what you get type of deal. I think for teachers now being vulnerable, because like when you're on Zoom, like they're like, hold on, little Becky's behind me doing whatever. Like it's let them into the world. So a lot of the reflections that teachers have is like, wow, I feel more humanized, and I see my students in a more humanized way. And while my first reaction is to judge and roll my eyes, like, you know what, you got to meet folks where they're at. Like, because it was easy before to be like, oh, that was just a bad kid, or that was the kid who showed up. So I think very much so. I think on the young people's side, man, for the schools that are coming back, I'm so happy for them, and I don't envy them, because it's going to be, it's been an extended summer break. It's been 18 months, and I ain't seen my homies. It's gonna be something. I'm glad I'm not in the building right now, but yeah, I think it's gonna shift. I hope it transforms. What I've heard from a lot of teachers is that they now understand the power of that relationship in a different way. Like for us, our first routine is shaking hands of everybody in the room. I won't claim I got that from my Baptist church upbringing, but like meeting and greeting everybody, and we teach young men, just the Western style of that, and then why that's important in this culture. But we talk about like the diaspora and all that stuff. But for our sake of our routine, they know how to shake everybody's hand in the room and like make eye contact and ask, "How are you doing?" Right, and learn how to like make those and really ask the question. Right, that's the first sign of love is I see you. So we work on that. So I think we had a virtual session with a young man who has done our physical program in the past, and he stopped me. He's like, "Mr. Marcus, how are we going to greet everybody online?" I was like, I don't know.
I don't know, Doc. Let's figure it out.
I don't know. And to your point, love is honesty. I don't know. But let's figure this out together. I tell them all the time, the only thing I'm an expert on is me. And so, we show up in love for them. And the one thing that we work with teachers on is and y'all said this powerfully earlier, love is accountability, right? To self and others. So, we even teach love through behavioral correction. A lot of people want to go to like punishment. It's like, no, if you have relationships, you can almost do anything. Like our relationship thing, a lot of times is we have kids draw a mirror and ask affirming words around them. And when they lose sight of that, go look at your mirror, right? Like, are you showing up as the best version of yourself right now? If the answer is no, let's talk about it. Right? Like it's not a whole bunch of yelling. I don't ever raise my voice. Kids know. Like I'm a whisper before I raise. And you're not gonna raise my blood pressure, right? We're gonna go back to the best version of you and go from there. And that's where it starts. So but to answer your question, I think it's gonna be some shifts. We'll see. But I think adults are having a different awakening, which is cool.
Do you do hourly sessions?
And how much do you charge?
I'm about to hit you on the line because I was like, I don't.
And can we get a discount if we do like half and half?
Yeah, because my persona, I've been trying to learn how to I'm just not as expressive, and sure, like I can talk about love, but I find people, they just hear my words, but I'm not very like like real soft and like extra open and all those things. So I'd be like, I don't know what am I not doing? So I might need to. I got your number now, so you can't avoid it.
But I don't, but I think that's powerful that you said that though. I don't think it's, and I tell my staff this all the time, like, don't show up like me, right? Like a lot of times, like your love, I'm sure, is expressed in more, and maybe a different way or an intimate way. Like I just had this conversation this weekend. I was watching a chef cook, and it was really quiet and really whatever, but I was like, that's it. He shows his love through through his food, right? Like we have a lot of. There's one young man who we would always do community circles. We call them healing circles. With him, and he never spoke. He just naturally quiet, right? And I would always just whisper to him. I would say, the moment you do say something, I know it's going. I just know it's going to turn this circle up. Now, part of it is me affirming him to give him the courage to do so. But man, when he finally did talk, I was like, well, God, no. Like I was, I was betting 50-50 bet, but it was how he showed up. Where he did show up, though, he was the most loyal kid. Like his brother was not that. His brother was the complete opposite. Right, but like he took care of his brother in a very doting way. He'd be the kid who would. We had a teacher who had stage 4 cancer at the time, and he'd be the one who would he would see him and be like, "What are you doing?" But he would go check on her or bring her a water. Like his love just showed up in a different way, and I don't want him to be me. Right, like this is me, and this is who I am. Right, but like I said, to your point, I suck at quality time. So my friends will tell you I don't answer the phone. Y'all, hey, look, I'm about to get touched out for being on the phone with y'all. Because I don't see it the same way. And so I've had to learn how to do that. Like how to spend time with my friends who really just want time. And I'd be like, all right, we've been together an hour. It's good. Like I enjoyed it. Golden Girls about to be on though. So let's so no, you're good. You're huge. It's just finding the amped up level of that.
I hear you, but also, and Carlie's in the space of mindfulness and those types of things as well. And for me, I feel like it was a much later thing to even hear about a lot of those things. So I'm listening to you and I'm hearing things like healing circle and greeting everybody. And I'm like, ooh, I don't know how I want to be in those spaces. I'll be quiet. So it's just like, man, how do you, getting more comfortable with all of those things? And it'd be interesting. I don't know what you have that you could show, or if there's anything you would share as far as curriculum or exercises or things like that. But I love those types of things.
And I also have a supplemental question for that. That and 80% of kids' time is spent outside of the classroom. They really only spend 20% of time in a classroom, and probably on Zoom is even less, which is crazy. So thinking about that, when you're looking at love and literacy and building this environment of trust and accountability and action, how do you think about them outside of the school? How does your programming, I guess, are there I don't know, things you give them, or the toolkit, like you mentioned a mural, that could be something they could probably, have at home or something to reference. But how do you address the time when they're not with you? Because that very well might be one of the only places they're getting love.
Right. To me, that's the most important time. So what we currently have, we currently have, we call it FAME, which is our acronym. So family, academics, motivation, and environment. So we say everybody can be famous. Cheesy play on words, but it works. And so what we do is we mentor outside of that time, right? So we break up our student load, and we just have real conversations, really clear with the parents and all that stuff. But when COVID was not a thing, it's showing up to games. It's, doing all the stuff that's cliche in that way. But we also always send them away with homework, the self-work. So one of our first assignments that you always do with us, our first homework assignment is your name. So what does your name mean? Google it, ask Jesus, and then, get a couple sources, because it might mean a couple different things in that. And then sit down and have dinner with your parents or whomever's around that may know, and ask why they named you that, right? And so, we begin to have them do that self-work, and then we talk about the power of name, right? Like name is nurture and nature, right? So, the nature of what you're called, if you think about it, your name is the thing you hear the most in your life. Well, even if you change it, over time, it's the thing that you hear. And so, mine is Marcus, right? So in the Google English definition, it means warrior. In African tradition, it means he who brings joy, right? And so has that been nurtured in me by my family? Because that's their duty, or my friends or whomever, right? And so we have that conversation. But my parents named me after a running back at USC. So it wasn't that deep, right? So we do that type of homework assignment. We give them family assignments, like this. Draw us a picture of who's most important to you in your family. It sounds cliche and it sounds cheesy, but you'll be surprised. And for us, now there's two sides to this. kids won't listen to this, so I can give away the magic. There's two ways to this. So it's also just to have them create that, but then we on this side learn who's really important to them. Because mom and dad might be on the paper, but it might be Auntie Carlie and Auntie Lexi. right. Like who is it you respond to? Right. And just on the who loves you, right? Like we have a banquet every year, and we have one young man who, was homeless and we struggled. He's the person who taught me a lot, actually. Because I hate to admit it, I didn't want him in the program because he didn't respond to me. So my ego got in the way. And lucky one of my staff members checked me and was like, he's exactly who we have to have. And while he was a challenge, right, we worked it out. He was a bigger kid. So on Mondays, he came from the shelter. He would come thinking he would come in the same clothes he had on Fridays. I just started giving him my clothes. The other staff members would take him to the gym shower. He would shower. He'd come back, smelling like all kind of acts, enunciate. And so, acts with an X. And his whole mood would change, right? And then we knew Monday mornings would be rough. We knew Friday afternoons would be rough because he didn't want to go home, right? So we get to our banquet. But his kid, genius. Like could code, like 13 years old. Could code, was that kid. The banquet came, we did everything we could to get his people there. For whatever reason, they didn't want to show up, right? So he has a breakdown right before the banquet. So like we're scrambled. Like we got 200 community members there, everybody. But remember, we've been talking about self-love and like love for your brother, right? Like, and I'm about to tear up just telling it, but like the most beautiful thing was you had 25 young men get up and be like, man, it don't matter. Your family's here with you right now.
Aww.
Like we love you. You know what I'm saying? So when he got up to get his thing, they all got up with him. And that's what it is. Like, and they did that, not we. We cultivated the space. They did that in 20 days, right? Like our summer program was only 20 days. And so it's like, and it also was this like beacon for him that people care about me no matter my circumstance. So, it's doable and it's so dope. And he's doing cool now, right? Like, we still check. I still keep in contact with him because, like I said, he was my teaching point. And I'm never ashamed to say that because I think as adults, the first thing we got to own is our mistakes. And so it's cool. But to answer your question, those are some of the homework things we give. We also, our other things, motivation. So what motivates you? We have conversations. They come back and say money. It's okay to be motivated by that. But let's talk about like internal locus of control. And then we talk about environment. And environment is just, we call it 3 C's. So small community, like your school. Big community, middle C, which is like your actual community. And then big C, what's your impact on the world? Like, who are you going to show up in as the world? I used to say as a kid, I wanted to change the world. And people would be like, stop saying that. And I would be like, and now I look back at them and I'd be like, but I still believe that, right? Like, hence why I say I'm the South End Batman. Like, I really do believe I'm a hero, no superpowers, but I aspire to that at least. So those are some of the things we give, and it's dope. It's so cool to see every kid show up differently.
Yeah, I think that's great. I bet you have so many fulfilling stories just thinking back on all the students over the years and all kinds of different circumstances and places where you can see that you've made a difference. And I think that's so cool. I commend you for the difference you have made. And I want to ask you about this Academy for Creating Excellence Atlanta. Is it still opening this year? And I just would like to hear about it. Like, what is special about this school? Where are you right now in prepping for an opening?
Oh, COVID. So we actually, we're going to open actually fall of 2022. Due to COVID, they stalled all new openings because at the time, money. But we'll be a 5th through 8th grade, all African-American male focused school. So any young man can come. And then we'll really be focused on, we call it loveful and dignity pedagogy. So everything we're talking about now, loveful, which is mine, and then dignity pedagogy, which is a powerful sister, Dr. Monique Liston out of Milwaukee, who centers dignity for Black men as a thing. So dignity pedagogy is just about seeing young Black men and Black people as humans first, not as those things. So it'll be 5th through 8th grade, 100 students each. We'll be enrolling soon once we solidify this building. But we'll mainly be focused on, we call it experiential learning. So we don't do grades, we call it mastery. And when students will come in, and have you at different competency levels, but actually experience the things they're doing. So based off our summer pilot programs in Seattle, if we do a week of building rockets, we spend that Friday with Black engineers at Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos' pet thing, building rockets. with Black engineers and launching their rockets there. We do a mock business contest. This is all partnership with Seattle. We will bring the same thing here with Amazon, right? So again, learn how to build your own business, do a business plan. That Friday, we spend all day with the Black at Amazon network for a whole day touring Amazon. They pitch it for them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not even just the big ones. It's barbershop, right? Like the beauty care industry for Black people we know is huge. The epicenter is here in Atlanta, right? And so what will those things be? Culinary, writing, you name it. So exposing young men to those skills early and giving them externships. So I spend a lot of my time shaking hands and kissing babies to build those partnerships. And it's beautiful to be able to do it in Atlanta because I call it Wakanda. Mm-hmm. So you're able to do it with people that look like us. So, and we also, we're still operating in Seattle. I have my hands in that as well, but my focus is here-ish.
So you mean to say that they'll actually get an education at the school that matters in day-to-day life?
That actually considers them.
Wow, we're going to actually learn some life skills.
What a thought.
Because I didn't.
Same.
I could tell you about that Pythagorean theory, though, but I don't use it.
I still get some nice texts from helping them change their mind. So I'll just say amen. But yeah, just understanding that what we've been doing hasn't been working for a lot of our kids, right? And so to your point, no knock on Pythagorean theorem, I guess, but like if you can learn how to walk out with some good skills, and we call it post-secondary success, like will you be able to leave high school actualized and ready to do whatever it is you want? College might not be for you right now. Like if I didn't have a scholarship, I probably should have waited to go to college until I was like 20, 21. I wasted that I gained life experience, but like grade-wise, that 0.7 in the first 2 years didn't do nobody good. I watched a lot of Sports Center. I watched a lot of Golden Girls, and I definitely got spent a lot of time in the cafeteria. But outside of that, I did go to convocations. We had to go to Holy Chapel. But beyond that, yeah. So what can we teach them or what can we give them? Specifically, again, young men, developmentally, we develop about 2.5 years behind y'all. And most school as it's dictated today is brain centered towards female learning because it's a lot of talking, it's a lot of communication, a lot of language, and y'all is just developmentally wired in general better for that learning. And 81% of teachers are women, 82% are white women. So you also have this cultural divide, right? So all that being said, we'll also be a safe space to hopefully build the Black male educator pipeline so we can have more Black men who aren't just there because they're Black men, but are there to actually help move along. Because you just can't be any Black man. I lost a couple friends because I won't hire them, but it's like, you ain't good for this, though. But we can talk about some other stuff. So
that's great.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm hyped. That sounds like the type of education that all these kids need
I want to see
receiving.
more about the school, learn about it. I'm trying to be on the board, come up with some content. For real, be on the board.
I was about to say, I've already thought about 3 people to connect you with. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, she works in this space, so she probably does.
Ready. One of them went to Spelman.
Right, and I'm thinking about how you can broaden it.
And y'all about to say the cool thing is I always say my last day or close to my last days will be when I find a strong, powerful sister who wants to do a sister school for young ladies. I just don't believe I can run it because I can't tell you how to be a Black woman, right? And then again, that's a lesson learned. We used to do a whole lesson on how do you treat a woman? And then we looked at each other one day and I was like,
we
ain't
don't
no
know.
woman in here. We up here talking about. I was like, fellas, my 2 co-founders back home, Willie and CJ, I was like, fellas, we might need to rethink this, right? And adding women to
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah. Now, I won't lie to you. There's a couple people who got about 8 weeks of all male woman lessons, but we figured it out after a while. So
thank God.
Talking to the head, not the heart.
Oh man,
absolutely.
Marcus, we want to take a minute to shout you out. We appreciate you for being on the podcast, and want to give you an opportunity to tell the listeners where they can find you. If there's a website they can go to, your social media, email, whatever you want to give to folks. And let us know if there's anything that you need or that you want to kind of shout out.
Dope. I'll do the pub of the organization. So we are ACE Academy. So you can find us online at www.ace, academywa.org. That's Seattle if you want to support. And then www.aceacademyatl.org if you want to support Atlanta. And then all my socials, I'm on IG. Is the I Am the People's Ninja. I know there's another podcast. But yeah, that's me. And honestly, just, check us out. Support both. We are a 501c nonprofit in both spaces doing great work. And if y'all know folks in Atlanta that are down to just transform education, I didn't give the whole vision, but part of the vision as well is to connect supportive businesses to the school to funnel as an economic development place. So a salon, a gym, a culinary space, a design thinking space. It all feed in that are also economic development for our students to learn life skills early, and our parents and community to have support. So anything folks want to do, and I'm a learner as well. So I just want to continue to learn and spread the message of love. Like I said, I'm 6'6" in the mystery way, but I'm unafraid to say the word love and just have conversations with folks about that. So.
Cool. Well, we appreciate you being here. I learned a lot. I'm glad that we got you on here because you make me want to look up some things to use for myself. Like I said, look, I'm not a parent yet. I sometimes I do stuff with youth, but I feel like sometimes it's harder to love like my fellow adults than it is the kids. So
100%, 100%.
So that's where I need some tips.
It's been acquired. It took a while, but I'm there. And you know, as cliche as it is, like we are just big versions of the kids we were trying to be, right? Like I had to grow up fast. You know, I've been working since I was 12. So, like my friends tease me because there's a lot of stuff I missed out on. Like, or just did, like I didn't watch a lot of movies, but it's like now I'm kind of making up for it. Like not a Peter Pan syndrome anyway, but like I literally try to wake up and have a joy for life. And if it's my last day tomorrow, like all my people know I love them. Like there ain't no doubt. So, you know, we go from there.
I love that. This was very inspirational. It's things like seeing these things in action that give me hope. So shout out to you and, you know, your joy and zest for life like that. So the things you do for yourself and all the things you do for the kids and their teachers and their parents. And we end every episode. I can't talk today, y'all. We end every episode asking a question of the week. And so it's post Valentine's Day. This is Mr. Love here on the podcast. And so of course we're going to ask about love. So, Marcus, we're going to start with you. What is one thing that we can do to love better? Like if you were giving advice, answering that question, what's one thing that we can do to love better?
You're going to say the best question for last, huh? You know, it's not an original thought, but tap into the things about yourself. Love yourself first, right? Have a pure love for you. John Legend said it best, right? All your perfect imperfections. And then a love for God or the universe, whatever you call God. And then try to be a mirror for that. Like everything y'all just said, like, I always quote one of my mentors, like, I am but a shallow reflection of all the love that's been sown into me. So like, I'm honored to be with y'all. I'm always honored to be with the most important thing in a parent's life. They handed me their kids. So that's love, man. That's it for me. So love yourself, I would say first, and then kind of go into that order.
I like that.
Lexi?
You know what? So one thing I would think about that, to answer that, I would say one way to love better would be to be and show genuine interest in, let's say, the person in front of you. Like to in the moment really care about what they're saying, listen to what they're saying. And if you come at it from more of that angle when you're with people, to genuinely be interested in what they have to say and what they're doing, that's kind of a act of love, or kind of being open to hearing and listening as a way to love better.
I like that. Good curiosity.
Yeah.
Mine, I would say, is to remember that we are all multifaceted people and to give people grace, including ourselves. Because you never know people's stories, where they come from, what they went through, who hit their car on the way here, and why they have attitude. Not to say you should let people run you over, any of those things. I think you should very much enforce your boundaries and also have grace for people, because you have no idea what's going on. And just because they're people.
Yeah, that's good too. That's a good little trifecta.
Hey.
To our listeners. You think about that too. Like one thing you can do to love better. I know when I re-listen to this, there's a couple places I want to take a couple notes or look up some things. So even listening to this episode, if there's anything that you gained from it about love or loving better or in a more full way, we'd love for you to share that. Put up some stories this week so Marcus can see the love and so we can tag him and the academy and everything on that as well. And just feel free to leave us comments on the post on the site, on the YouTube, on what else do we have?
You can leave us voicemails.
Yep, on the actual, on IG when we post up from it and everything. So we'd love to hear from you. And we know you're going to be as inspired by Marcus as we were. So again, thank you for being on this episode. You're the first guest. Isn't he the first guest of 2020? What year is this? 2,528, whatever, 2021. First guest. So we appreciate that very much.
Starting with love. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you all so much.